I'm a pretty lucky man, really. I'm lucky because I've got several passions in my life. Family, music, classic race cars, and education. I'm passionate about education. And I'm particularly lucky because I have the impact and the ability through being a teacher to have an influence on our young people in our world, in our lives. I have the ability to be able to influence what they learn, the way in which they learn, to have an impact on what their future lives may be. I'm also particularly lucky because I get to step behind individual subjects and I get to design educational programs. So the impact that I can have is not just individual students, but rather it's at program level, spreading across, for in my example, at Bond University. The issue that we have is that we have a problem. We have a situation where graduate employability rates are the lowest they've been in Australia in the last 20 years. We have a situation where the youth unemployment rate in Australia is currently sitting at about 13%. And on the chart behind me, you'll see youth unemployment in Australia progressed over the last 40 years. And what you see is in the early 1980s, when we floated the Australian dollar and we deregulated our banking system, there was a spike in youth unemployment and a rapid recovery thereafter as the economy improved. Again, when the recession we had to have in the early 1990s came through, a spike in youth unemployment, because when things go tough, you get rid of the people that are most expendable, those that are perhaps less skilled, less experienced. And a rapid recovery through the 90s. The Asian financial crisis, Russian debt crisis, and the dot-com bust happened in the early 2000s. We see a bit of a spike in youth unemployment, and then the wonderful economic boom of the 2000s saw a very significant reduction in youth unemployment. And along came late 2007, the global financial crisis. And again, we see the inevitable spike in youth unemployment, but this time there's no rapid recovery. In fact, things for our youth here in Australia who are exiting our schools, that are graduating from university, that are finishing their trade schools, is becoming even worse. We have a situation at the moment where 1 in 3 of our unemployed youth are out of work, looking for work for longer than 6 months, and 1 in 5 who are out of work, looking for work, are out of work for more than 12 months. This is unacceptable. So we look for answers. We wonder, why might this be? Why is it a situation where we have a segment of our society that's finding it so tough? And we look at things like job automation and say, the robots are taking all of our jobs. Automation is coming through, artificial intelligence, machine learning is automating typical jobs that would be done by entry-level workers. We have PricewaterhouseCoopers coming out and saying 40% of the jobs in the United States are going to disappear within the next 15 years. We start to think, maybe we need to reskill ourselves. What we do know that is happening is uncertainty abounds. You can put out words like Brexit, like Trump, like Macron, just in the different way in which business is happening and commerce is happening and society is happening every day. Yeah, how we consume our music. Things are changing. Uncertainty is the new certainty. And so organisations such as the Institute for the Future, perhaps the World Economic Forum, go out and they say, we must need different new skills. We need these future work skills, things like complex dexterity, which robots find very difficult to do, and emotional intelligence. So yes, hairdressing definitely is a profession that will sustain, because you need to be able to talk, engage, and get to those fine details of people's hair. Yeah? You see things like a design mindset, complex problem solving, transdisciplinarity, the ability to work in cross-functional, cross-cultural, cooperative, competitive work teams. Yeah? Skills are changing. But we've hit a bit of a roadblock. We're in a situation where we have a schooling system which has developed and evolved to be exceptionally good at delivering disciplinary skills. If I was to be particularly cynical, I could say that high schools are exceptionally good at producing a score to enter university. Yeah? We see that going through our schooling system, despite passionate teachers that want to have a difference and want to make a difference in individual students' lives, the system overrides, and we get ourselves in a situation where students come out ready to enter a workforce and they're ill-prepared. So I've gone around and thought, well, we need a different way of looking. We're in a world of uncertainty, and if you go back to the literature and the way how we understand uncertainty, go all the way back to the 1920s, when Frank Knight put forward the view that entrepreneurs were in fact the masters of uncertainty. They had a particular way of thinking, reasoning and acting in their head that made them not just lucky risk takers, but rather they had a particular skill at making decisions when not everything was known. So I went around and I've searched the corporate worlds, and I've gone to like D school at Stanford University. I've gone and examined what Northwestern does with their exceptional program. I've looked at INSEAD. I've examined our own Australian ecosystem. I've gone to the way that corporates run, StartMate, River City Labs, Y Combinator, and I've come up with a view as to not necessarily the skills that we need to develop in our education system, but rather the mindsets that we need to develop in our education system. And for me, it starts with curiosity. Because when you look at our little prep students that come into primary school wide-eyed, ready to go, they're curious. They examine the corner of the room, they pick up the little pencils that they're not allowed to use, their curiosity abounds. And our schooling system does a very, very good job at squashing that out through standardised testing. Yeah? Exceptionally good. Perhaps for understandable reasons. Assurance of learning. Yeah? Understanding how we're educating and can we test that we are. There are good reasons behind this system, but they're failing our youth. Once you start with curiosity, you tend to show interest in something. Like, oh, that's an interesting little point. That's an interesting endeavour. I might give that a bit of a go. And as you give things a go, you tend to develop competency in those areas. You start to perform. People look at you. They start to promote you. You start to become good. And before you know it, you start developing a bit of a passion. I was going to be a currency trader. I did an undergrad in economics and finance, a minor in quant. I've got a master's in finance, a PhD in finance. I was going to be a currency trader. And here I am, designing education programs because I'm passionate about them. Because one particular educator asked me to come back and teach a class. And that interest developed into a passion. In order to solve problems, you need to have a creative mindset to see a new way of being able to attack, to understand, to nut down and think creatively how you might be able to solve that problem. And as we know, when we look at successful entrepreneurs, at the root of every successful entrepreneurial story is a tale of resilience, of determination, of persistence, of perseverance. And for me, I could look and I can see constructs on how to build creativity. We know about design thinking, about mindset and problem solving, the empathetic mind rather than ecocentric mind. But this concept of resilience was a bit struggling for me, and I went around and I started to imagine how we might be able to embed resilience into our education system. How do you do that? So my initial view of resilience was there was this individual on a journey, and the journey was unknown, and you might be reflecting back to your readings of Joseph Campbell and the hero's journey, As you go down this path, you get these trials and tribulations that come through, and it's your internal grit and guts and determination and your particular perseverance that gets you to your goal at the end. And it was an individual construct that I was looking at. So when, in his infinite wisdom, Queensland's chief entrepreneur, Mark Salby, put out that he was going to launch the first ever Venturer program run by Ben Southall, the man who won the best job in the world, a global adventurer, about building resilience, I said, that's for me. I need to find out what this resilience construct is. How can I learn it? What can I see? How does it develop? And how can I embed that into pedagogy such that we can build it in our youth? So I put my application in, and I was lucky enough to be selected along with 18 other members of the Queensland entrepreneurial ecosystem, venture capitalists, startup founders, community leaders. And, you're going to laugh a little bit. For our resilience test, we went to the Whitsundays. We landed in Hamilton Island, and this was just last week. I got back on Sunday, hence the facial hair, and for 7 days we launched into a journey that at times was physically demanding, at many times was mentally demanding, and we were blessed with having some very inspirational people come and talk to us. And I'm just going to focus on one. It was Matt Galinsky, and you might have heard Matt Galinsky's story, a gentleman who was a celebrated chef who on Christmas Day in 2011, his Christmas tree caught fire and resulted in the loss of his wife and his 3 daughters. Third-degree burns to 65% of his body, induced coma for 2 months, lost 25 kilos, no muscle mass. This is a man that hit, I think, I haven't seen anything else that can match it, absolute rock bottom. And he talked about the fact when he first woke up out of the coma, it was his dad that was right by his side. And he discussed with us the process that he rebuilt his life. And as I was listening to this tale, it reminded me of, and as you do, as you listen to these things, it reminded me of my own relatively insignificant challenges in life. And a little visual that Dr. Dave, and he'll know who he is, embedded in my mind as to how to survive a period of grief, a period of challenge. And you can imagine yourself as a glass, and you're a glass and you're sitting on the edge of a table, and there's a concrete floor below you, and you are fallen off the table and you're going to hit that concrete floor. And each of us is our own particular glass. We might be a fragile crystal champagne flute. We might be the kind of tumbler that you put your favourite scotch into, nice thick walled, big solid base. Yeah? We as an individual have our own resilience construct that we can build, that we're influenced by, right? There's only 3 components to this. You are one of them. The second is the table and the height of the table. And when I went through my particular challenge, I thought I was on a pretty big high table. You can think of it maybe as a coffee table, maybe as a dining table, maybe as a high bar, or maybe Matt Galinsky. Yeah? So you can start to rationalise the height of your table. And the third thing you can do is you can look down at that concrete floor and you can choose to put pillows down there. And your pillows are your support network. And when I look back at my pillows, it was my family, it was my close friends, it was Dr. Dave. It was a supportive group that moderated and improved my resilience through their resilience. And that's what I took out of the Queensland Venture Program. That resilience isn't just an individual construct. Resilience is actually a system-wide construct. And a resilient community, a resilient school, a resilient classroom builds in a resilient student. We can put things around that student, but we must build it in our program. Our program needs to support the types of outcomes we want in our students. So we have the opportunity. I've been to Singularity University and I've read Peter Diamandis' work, and he has this beautiful book called Optimism of Abundance. You must read it. We are in a situation of abundance, and we can choose to make the difference in the way in which we educate. We've got a review happening of our national curriculum at the moment. You know, its impending time is coming to be implemented. We have the opportunity to start not delivering on disciplinary skills, or rather I should say not only delivering on disciplinary skills, but rather to be delivering on the type of cognitive abilities, the type of mindsets that we know sit under the entrepreneurial method. That's our opportunity, such that we can launch our youth into a vibrant world, an optimistic world, an abundant world, where they are the masters of designing their own income, be it as an employee, as an employer, as a startup founder, as a side hustle, whatever it is they want to be. And our schooling system needs to match that. So tonight I make the very strong case that experiential entrepreneurship education is a required component of our overall schooling system. Thank you.